Hi guys, my name is Leah Barkell and I work for Catholic Community Services in the foster care programs. Today we are going to be talking about our international foster care program. With me on the call today I have Dorothy. Dorothy, would you like to just introduce yourself and your role in this program?
Yeah, hi, my name is Dorothy McCabe. I am the Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program Manager within the International Foster Care Program.
Great. Beatrice?
Hello, my name is Beatrice Abbott, and I am the Unaccompanied Undocumented Children's Foster Care Program Manager. And I've been working in international foster care since 2003. I was previously working with Dorothy in that program, and here we are.
Great. And how about you, Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm one of the foster home licensors for our URM program, specifically working down here in Vancouver, Washington.
Great. And we also have another licensor in our Tacoma area, so we license families from Vancouver all the way up to South King County, and then out kind of on the peninsula, Bremerton area. So we are everywhere with this program. Dorothy, can you kind of give us a history of this program? Highlighting the URM?
Sure, yeah. The Unaccompanied Refugee Minor or URM program began in 1979 when our agency became one of the first in the country to provide foster homes for unaccompanied refugee minors. So at that time, unaccompanied youth were without adult caregivers, and they were coming from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos at the time. Our state and our agency has maintained that commitment to care and welcoming URMs continuously since that time.
Great. And Beatrice, you're under the IFC umbrella as well, so can you explain the UC program?
Right, so in 2003, after the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the International Foster Care Program started accepting youth that were undocumented but eligible to resolve their status to enter the program in foster care. And that's where I was recruited by my former supervisor. And the original goal was for me to work with young women that had been trafficked. We started serving that population. But also at that time, once the youth were able to get their status resolved, then they are eligible to go into the URM program and have all those same benefits. But it does take about a year or two at this time to resolve their status. So they're in my program for a little while, and then they transition. And so Dorothy and I, the URM program and the UC programs work very hand in hand.
Great. Can we talk about who all we're working with here? We talk foster care, and so Stephanie, can you talk just a little bit about our partner with the state for this program, and then we can kind of talk about the other programs after that.
Sure. So for licensing purposes specifically, all of our foster homes have to be approved by the state. So we do all of the front work and then send everything to the state to be officially approved at the end. And then we oversee and maintain the foster home licensing with our regional licensing partners at the state. And then probably Dorothy can talk a little bit more about our partner in terms of the case management side of things.
Sure, I can speak a little bit about that, and also the other stakeholders or organizations we work with on a national level, since we have kind of all these different layers coming together. Since the URM foster care program began, there have been 2 national voluntary agencies that have maintained the coordination of care for unaccompanied minors in foster care, and that's the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. So our agency is an affiliate of U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and they coordinate our referrals as well as provide technical assistance for the youth that come into our program. Once the URM foster care program became federally funded, the Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement became involved and provided the oversight and partnered with state refugee coordinators' offices across the country to ensure the URM care was provided. So our state refugee coordinator's office is part of the Department of Social and Health Services, Economic Services Administration, and that makes up the Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance. So the state administers and oversees the program to ensure that the program and contract requirements, including case management services and benefits, are met for all the youth in our program. So our program actually contracts and receives oversight from the State Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance to provide URM foster care.
Great. Perfect. So let's talk about where these IFC youth are coming from. Because we get calls all the time asking that question. Where are they coming from? Where are they currently? Beatrice, let's talk about your program first, because it's a little different than Dorothy's program. So let's say, where are those kids right now, and how do we place them in our foster homes?
All right. So the youth in our program, the great majority of them do come from Central America. Having said that, we have had youth in our program from Africa. We've had them from Cuba. That one's not recent though. The African is. In other parts of the world as well. It's been very interesting how youth will go from countries that are overseas and then come up through those southern countries. So youth will typically are fleeing. They're fleeing just like any other youth that is in a terrible situation. They'll be detained by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they are placed into facilities all along the southern border. There's thousands of these youth that enter those facilities, and of that, only a very small percentage is eligible to enter long-term foster care because they do have cases to resolve. And so we get those cases and we review them. We really want to make sure that the foster parents have a good match. We really listen to what the foster parents are looking for in their home to complete their family and then to make the placement. It's a little bit different than the URM program, but there's a lot of overlap and similarities as well.
And then Dorothy, can you talk about how kids are coming into the URM program?
Yeah, so youth coming into the URM program come to us in different paths. Youth may be referred as overseas refugees. So these are youth that are designated in another country, whether it's youth that are in a refugee camp or urban refugee location, and where they've been registered and determined to be unaccompanied refugee minors by the United Nations. Those referrals then come through the U.S. Department of State, and that's where our national voluntary agencies come into play and refer out to our national network, which we are a part of. Youth may also come to us as survivors of trafficking or asylees, or youth that have been granted a special visa due to abuse, abandonment, or neglect. So these youth can apply for placement and services through the Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So that's how youth could come in various ways to our program.
Perfect. And then, so the youth coming in the program is one aspect, right? And then we also have foster parents. And so sometimes when someone might be interested in foster care, they're kind of deciding which way to go, you know, what age range they want to foster, who would they be good with taking care of, teenagers, young people, that kind of thing. Stephanie, can you talk about what it takes to be a good IFC foster parent?
Sure. I think maybe to clarify up front, the majority of our youth in the program are older youth. We very rarely or occasionally will get a younger kid or maybe a mom and a baby case. Those are extremely rare. So I think part of what makes a good IFC foster parent is a willingness to work with young adults and see them through a lot of transitions and prepare for independent living is the ultimate goal, right? And so I think that takes a lot of patience and a lot of willingness to work with both our young people and our staff around how best to support them through all of these transitions and then getting them ready for independence.
Great. And so when foster parents come into any type of foster care, trainings are required. Beatrice, can you talk about the specific trainings for the UC program?
Sure. So there'll be the basic one that is required by the state and by our agency, which is the core caregiving class, right? CPR, first aid, pediatric, it has to be included. And then we will have a orientation to the International Foster Care Program. In that orientation, we actually introduce foster parents to both programs so that although they might not be working with the UN program right away, we know that we're planting the seed for when they eventually might be working with that youth in that program. The training for the to work in this program is pretty extensive, actually, and it's good. It's beneficial. It is beyond what is required by the state. It is 40 hours a year. It focuses a lot on behavior management, a lot on teen development, because so many of the youth are teenagers, adolescents, and teenagers. Having said that, we do get small children. It is unusual, as Stephanie says, but there are just very unusual circumstances. The world is in a strange place. So we will individualize training when that happens to include parenting strategies towards younger placements. So there's that. And then there's a lot of the legal pieces that Dorothy touched on a little bit. There's the trafficking, all these things. And it's hard to understand. And how does that apply to each individual youth? Because each individual case is different. We do not want foster parents to get involved with the legal process, but it's nice to know what is that legal process in at least a broad sense so that they can talk with the youth and maybe help reduce their anxiety levels. And also that's part of the training as well, is how to deal with those feelings of anxiety that come along with the adjustment process of living in the United States. A lot of emphasis on cultural training as well.
Dorothy, do you have any additional information for your program, or is it pretty similar?
It's pretty similar. I feel like we do a lot of cross training as well. That's an important aspect that I think is a strength of our international foster care program, is that we do try and train homes so that there's the ability for youth who may work through sort of the legal aspects of everything and qualify for different parts of our program, but have the ability to stay in the same foster home, to stay with the same family and not have disruption. But that does, require us to kind of be comprehensive in our approach of training and looking at the topics needed. So I would just echo what Beatrice mentioned in terms of ensuring kind of training around cross-cultural sort of communication and aspects that are really important and integral to our work, as well as the development of specialized trainings as there's needs that come up that were mentioned. And we may help families around areas where there might be more specific training depending on the background that a youth might have, depending on where they come from, what customs they may practice, and other areas that might be helpful to keep the families trauma-informed on trauma-informed care. That is a big piece for all of our youth. They've all experienced trauma in one way or another. And sometimes that can even be the acculturation process itself, getting used to adjusting to being in a whole nother country and culture without their kind of natural support network to do that with. So how to help be that support network for that youth in the community that they're now kind of building their lives. I think those are areas that we try and additionally do as a whole team for all of our homes.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if that would work. I wanted to add to something that Dorothy just mentioned, the trauma-informed care. Our program is just here it became a requirement for all foster parents and staff to have completed 4 trainings in trauma-informed care, each about an hour long. They're excellent trainings, and I would just, for anyone that's interested, recommend them to anyone, really.
One thing that I really love about CCS and about the basic requirements to become a foster parent is if you are interested in maybe a different CCS foster care program, you take the caregiver core training, the orientation, CPR, first aid, but then maybe down the road, you want to switch from community-based to international. You don't have to start all that again. It's just doing the new trainings for this program. And so you can kind of go, I mean, it's not always easy, but you can move and transition to a different program. Or if you don't know what you want to do at the start, you can do the initial trainings and then make a decision as you're training. And so that's really cool about being under the CCS umbrella. And that kind of transitions to kind of how do we create community within our IFC program. And Stephanie, maybe you can talk a little bit about what we do at roundtables and how our foster parents get together. And those kind of
Yeah. So prior to the pandemic, we had separate in-person roundtables with our various sites. So Tacoma had one roundtable, Vancouver had a roundtable where all of our foster parents come together, we have a meal, we get to hang out and chat through maybe some struggles or challenges, and then we'll have a little training component because one of the requirements of being a licensed foster care provider is that you do ongoing training. So we're happy to help and kind of fit that in so you don't have to do a whole bunch extra and go out in search of additional trainings. Now with COVID, one of the cool things that has happened is that we're now doing roundtable virtually, and we're able to have both Tacoma and Vancouver foster parents on the same roundtable calls. Which is great, I think, in particular for Vancouver because we're a newer site. And so we get to mine the depths of experience in the Tacoma program and create some really unique connections there and then streamline some of our training for our staff side too. So it's been great.
Awesome. And so while that is going on, we actually have something else really cool going on in the building. Dorothy, can you kind of talk about the SIL part of those roundtable nights? And those
so the independent living skills, yeah. So the independent living skills classes, you know, whether it's in person when we're able to do so, or we are virtual, it is offering that platform for youth to connect. And that goes for our youth as well, from our Vancouver-based site as well as our Tacoma-based site. It's a great opportunity for our youth to get together for all of our international foster care youth, right? To have that opportunity for peer support, as well as building their independent living skills. So helping them focus on, you know, what they can do in terms of their own development during this stage of life as they kind of prepare for independence, and important topics for them to learn about as well as relate to one another on. And I think that has been a helpful sense of kind of promoting that sense of community for those youth.
And I think that we also know how to have fun too. So in the International Foster Care Program, we get together and do fun activities, talent shows. We did karaoke one year, summer picnics. And so we're not only learning together, but we're also celebrating together, which I think is vital, you know, when we're doing this work and for our kids. So I think that's really cool. And then Beatrice, this question kind of goes into something else that is, I think, really cool about CCS's foster care program. But how long can you stay in this program? And can you talk a little bit about some unique opportunities that help our kids transition to adulthood?
Well, let me see. The youth that are in our program, let me qualify that first. The goal of any foster care program is always going to be family reunification. Having said that, the majority of our kids don't have that possibility for a variety of reasons. But if one pops up, we're going to go for it. That's what we're mandated to do. So they end up staying usually until they're age 18. Hopefully we can get them close to the finish line in terms of high school, right? So occasionally we have a youth that will choose to emancipate at age 18, and that's to be expected. There's always going to be youth that feel they need to take that step. But I'm happy to say a great number of them stay on. By the time they get to that close to 18, though, they've usually have reclassified, i.e. designated into the URM program. And then Dorothy's team gets to see more of that final step. And so I think at this point, it would be prudent for me to allow Dorothy to finish that other piece of that as to what that looks like, because then that feeds into SIL, which is really cool. And I do manage an independent living house, the Lee House, which houses some of those residents that are living some of that independent life. I'll go ahead and let Dorothy finish that up.
Yeah, thank you, Beatrice. So youth need to enter the unaccompanied refugee minor program, well, all of our programs before the age of 18. And once they turn 18 in the unaccompanied refugee minor program, they can elect to stay until age 21. So that is an option that they have. And they could stay in a foster home till they're 21, or they would also have the potential option of transitioning to supervised independent living placement. So that's a sort of a step in between full independence and kind of trying things out, where the youth is actually responsible for their own care and ensuring that they're identifying and maintaining their own housing during that time. And they would still have connections to our independent living programming and case management services, but they're kind of taking that next step before they turn 21. And the program that Beatrice manages, which she could talk about a little bit more, offers a unique option for some of the male youth that we have before the age of 21.
Right. So just to finish that piece up a little bit, it's not for it's limited. We are only able to have 6 residents at a time. That's all the house allows. If we had another one, I'm sure that would reach capacity at some point. And we've also had a lot of questions asked about when can we do one for females, but we'll see. Only time will tell. We do have house monitors that are there 5 hours every night to make sure that house rules are being followed to the extent that they can. Take a look around the property, make sure that it's not being trashed. Although I have to say that the youth have been very prepared by this point, and they really do maintain. They do. I've actually been impressed that they don't make a mess of it. It seems like their foster parents really prepare them for that step, and so do the case managers. And then the house monitors are also available to help them with homework should they need that, because not all of them are fully 100% English proficient. And to help them with other things like, oh, I'm studying to get my driver's license. Can you just sit with me and we can do a jam session? What's going to be on the test? And a lot of little things like that, but not be a parent. And I think that's what a lot of the youth in both Dorothy and when her program and mine is that so many of the youth have come from circumstances where they're not used to being in a structured family environment anymore. And they struggle. Some of them do okay. They're very respectful to their foster parents, but there's a piece of them that yearns to be in an environment like they were kind of before, without parents, which is sad. But at least we have a place for them where they can still learn and have guidance. So I'm feeling pretty good about that program.
Just one more kind of part on that. I know, Leah, you had kind of asked about what sort of specialized services around helping the youth kind of transition to independent living. And I think we've talked about, the kind of the array of placement services, but I think another aspect that is nice about our team is that we have a dedicated in-house independent living team. So there's staff members dedicated in-house that work with youth based out of our Tacoma and Vancouver sites. That really ensure that we have independent living programming set up that is responsive to the needs of the youth. They really do tailor that sort of curriculum and programming and one-on-one sessions with youth, regardless if they're in a foster home or they're trying to figure things out on their own in supervised independent living, to really look at each of their needs, to tailor it for youth that, for many of them, have had to survive and be independent in some way before they've come to us. So it's really just a matter of helping them kind of refocus on what their goals are and help them retool the abilities and tools that they have, but in a way that will hopefully make them even more successful in the environment that they're finding themselves in, the communities that they're finding themselves in. So I think our team really works hard to work together on the service planning for those youth, with the youth, to motivate them and help just provide a little bit of guidance in how to navigate to reach those goals. And we often call in foster parents and foster families and other natural supports for the youth to be a part of that effort to help that youth, because we recognize that it's also about building out their larger support network, and how that affects their success in that transition as well.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. But if people have more questions, they can feel free to type it in the chat box. And then my contact information will be in there as well. So thank you for joining us, all of you. And for anyone out there, there's a great need right now for foster parents in any capacity. And we at CCS would be happy to work with you and walk you through this, and have you join our team. Have a wonderful day.